The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Everybody has their own story and their own journey to share. Every journey conceals another journey within its lines, the path not taken and the forgotten angle. Listen to the stories from others sharing their triumphs and struggles that led them to where they are today. Welcome to the journey within you. I just get so excited when I get to have special guests on and share their story. And I had the best conversation with Nicole when we had our pre-call, and I just felt God all in it and the spirit that's living in her and the purpose that she's been called into at a young age. Because I say young, I'm 62 and she's only 31. And it's so cool to see her step into this life that she knows that God is calling her into. So I'm not going to take a lot of time. I want you to just dive in, Nicole, and take us on this journey that God has led you to where you are today.
Thank you so much. You're so sweet. I am so thrilled that I get to be with you. And like you said, like ditto about our previous conversation. I thought it was so sweet and you're just awesome. And I'm so excited that you're doing this podcast. I think it's awesome. I listened back to some of your episodes and it's just really beautiful.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
it's so good. So I'm really excited to be here and prayed this morning that I just let the spirit lead as I talked about
Mm,
everything and that it would just give honor and glory to him because he's the only reason that I am where I am today. And all that said, it's not that it's like a cakewalk and it's super easy, but like there's
right.
so much goodness and wisdom that comes from experiences that are hard. And I'm so glad that I learned that lesson now because, I have so much life to live ahead of me. So
Yeah.
very thankful. So I currently live in East Tennessee in Knoxville, but I grew up about an hour north of here where the Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee border all meet in like the southern part of Central Appalachia coal mine area.
Oh,
And so much of my story begins with my family and just a lot of generational poverty and a
mhm.
lot of generational trauma, addiction, things like that. And I'm really grateful that my parents, never entered into that lifestyle, even though they were around it. Both their fathers weren't great fathers and husbands.
Yeah.
And but both of my mamas were believers and really gave them a heart for the gospel. And it's hard because I don't necessarily feel this calling on my life in this stage. My parents really had a calling to be parents and love their children
Hmm.
well in a way that they weren't loved well and to
Hmm.
provide for them in a really great way. And so although I was around a lot of chaos and a lot of poverty, um, I didn't think that we had any poverty. You know what I mean? I thought that
Yeah.
we were doing
They
really great.
made
They took me
sure you
upstairs
didn't feel that. Yeah.
yeah, and they kept me really safe, and despite having limited resources and despite being in an area where there, isn't really anything, it's just
Hmm.
mountains and farms and a tiny Walmart, like
Yeah. Yeah.
they allowed me to dream bigger than the scope of my reality and
Mm,
encouraged me in so many ways to chase after the things that God was writing on my heart that
mm.
seemed impossible. They never dimmed any light inside of me. I want to get emotional. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they had that done to them and they
Yeah.
didn't want that for their children. And so, really thankful for them. And at an early age, I was very close with both of my memoirs, my memoir Fern and my memoir Daisy.
Yeah.
And
I love the names. I
yes,
love the names.
they were just huge influences in my life. And my husband, he isn't super close with any of his grandparents. And I just get really sad because I just think how
Yeah.
much what a blessing it was for me to have that relationship
Hmm.
with them and the impact they had on my life. And my Mama Fern was a Spitfire. She sang in gospel trios and she wanted to be a nurse when she graduated high school and she couldn't afford to stay in college. So she
Mm.
only went for 1 year and came back and then got married, raised a family. And then when her husband passed away in her early 50s, he was quite a bit older than her. She went back to college and became a nurse.
Oh my
And
goodness.
just she and when she worked for the men's prison
Wow.
And so she just was a huge testimony to me and really planted some seeds that as I talk about my story, it'll make sense
Yeah.
a little bit. And she loved clothing. She loved fashion. When she started working at the prison, she was making more money than she'd ever made before. And she went a little crazy with like buying us clothes and like shopping
Yeah.
for us and
Yeah.
everything. And
Yeah. Making
she
sure you're
wanted us,
dressed to the
yeah,
hilt, right?
she wanted us to be spoiled. And then
That's what
my dad,
grandmas do.
yes, yes. So that was my mom's mom. And my dad's mom, my mama Daisy, was 10 years older than my other mama. So she kind of
Oh,
grew up in
wow.
a different
Error. Yeah.
era, really.
Yeah.
She remembered the depression. She had rations and she like canned and did a lot of like homesteading kind of stuff today
Hmm.
that like I do, but it's like an anomaly that I do. And I'm really thankful she taught. She, sat down with me and made pies with me and we like just
Oh,
did,
yeah.
like really simple
Biscuits. Did you
things.
make biscuits?
Yes,
Yeah.
lots of biscuits, lots of cornbread, lots
Yeah.
of fried things, and
Hmm.
working in the garden and stuff like that. And she taught me how to use like petals from irises to make paint, and so we paint with iris
Oh,
in the summer.
wow.
And she loved to forage and go through the field woods and stuff like that. So we do that a lot. And she loved photography. She loved art.
Mm.
She drew all the time. She every Christmas she wanted like a new art set. She was super creative, but she didn't have like confidence in what she did, even though
Yeah.
she had all these abilities. And she only had an eighth grade education, and
Wow.
she just
That
was,
was most at that
yeah,
time.
yes.
They
And so
didn't finish
she,
school.
yeah, she was wonderful. And so I had these two very kind of different ladies
Hmm.
really pouring into me and showing me honestly really the beauty of the body of Christ and how
Mm.
God uses different skills and abilities in people, because these women couldn't have been
Yeah.
opposite in their personalities. And bits of them are in me and in my journey and how I act now as a woman,
Mm.
because they poured so much into me. So really thankful for that.
Yes.
That's kind of the foundation of the kind of life that I was brought into. And I had family members that struggled with addiction and I was around that. My mom and dad got married super young, and they'll tell you this to themselves. They were immature when we were little and
Mm.
probably left a situation they shouldn't have been in, and I was exposed to things that created a lot of trauma for me and
Hmm.
that I didn't process till I was like in therapy in my 20s, just
Yeah.
understanding like things that I'd gone through. And as crazy as this is to say, I am really thankful for the experience. And I might be jumping ahead a little bit here, but I'll jump ahead, then I'll go back. Uh,
Yeah.
I do jail ministry, and when I share my testimony with these women in the jail, they don't see me necessarily as who they're going to be, but they see themselves in my parents and they
Yeah.
see themselves in my grandparents, and
Yeah.
they see that if they make the choices to follow the Lord, that their children and their grandchildren
Yeah.
can live a life that's holy and pure for
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And to me that is so special. And they see that even
Hmm.
though like if they feel like they've already messed up with their kids, that they can
Yeah.
experience these things and they can still like the Lord can
That
still
can
redeem it
change.
and
Yeah.
make it beautiful. So anyways, that's that little piece.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I from a really rural area and got exposed to 4-H as a kid. And that was really what
That's
opened up a
pivotal.
lot of doors for me and brought people into my life that if people in my family that had gone to college, if any of them had, I would probably say like probably 40% of my family members older than me went to college.
Mm.
And those that had all studied like a STEM degree. They're nurses, they are working engineering. I have some that work in aerospace and moved away. My aunt worked for the state of Kentucky. She does like stormwater stuff. So she has like a chemistry
Hmm.
biology background. And
Wow.
that's just not
Not your
no,
forte.
not me. Not me at all.
Yeah.
And I was just always really interested in art. And like I said,
Yeah.
my family encouraged that. And 4-H was that outlet for me to learn
Mm.
a lot of handicrafts, things that are forgotten forms of art, basket weaving, felting, things like that. But then also really exposed me to a lot, and this might sound silly, but like fashion stuff, even in Tennessee,
Yeah.
um, that I was like, oh, this is a job. Like people do this for a living. And
Mm.
and I kind of just I remember from a young age just really loving clothes. My mama who loved photography would let me like go in her clothes and wrap clothes around me. She
Yeah.
of
All the
me
pictures.
modeling,
Yeah.
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 Um, and I just always really liked clothes. I loved to sew when I was little. I started sewing with my mama Daisy, who was crafty. She was more than crafty. She was an artist, but she
Artists. Yeah.
would give me needle and thread before I could write. So I was like
Oh my
3 years old
goodness.
sewing by
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
And so 4-H really helped me develop those skills in a more formal way, I would say,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
correct
To see
way.
that it meant
Yeah.
something, really, yeah.
Yeah, and that it could be a career,
Mhm.
and, because at an early age, I felt like I wanted to adopt and have children, that way and grow my family that way, but I kinda was fed this narrative that there wasn't gonna be a husband who would wanna do that with you, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
in my as a child, I knew all these things were good for a family, but I didn't really think that maybe I would have a family, right? I
Right,
wasn't sure
right.
what like, I wanted that, and I wanted that for myself, but I wasn't really sure if that was gonna happen, and so I was
Mm.
really content when I learned that these things could be, like, a skillful use for a job. I was like, "Oh, it's not just for a family, like, I can do this and make money and, like, be a productive citizen," right?
Yeah.
And so, go through high school, I'm doing, like, leadership things with 4-H, I'm, like, doing tons of interviews, I'm just becoming a very well-rounded person,
Mhm.
doing, public speaking and stuff, and if anyone sits with me for 5 minutes and they have kids, and if they care to listen to somebody who doesn't have kids tell them how they should raise their kids, I will say that they should do 4-H because I just
Yeah.
everybody that I did 4-H with, like, they're all, like, doing great stuff. Like, even if
Right.
like, if we just look at, like, the standard of people my age and how they live, they're
Mhm.
all doing really amazing things,
Mhm.
have really
My
good careers.
grandson just came back from 4-H camp, his
Yeah,
first experience.
yeah,
He's lit. He is so
it's just
excited. I'm
special.
so proud of him.
Yeah, it's really awesome, and I mean, it's not for everybody, like, my brother didn't
Right,
do it,
right.
like, you know what I mean? It's not for everybody, but if your child has that bend,
Mm.
encourage it every chance you get. So
Mhm.
anyways, so I did that and I got to tour college campuses, see that apparel and clothing was a degree that I could get in.
Mhm.
And in high school, my parents again encouraged me. And I think this is a lot of Jesus too, just in my life. I was like, you know what I should do? From a tiny town, I had no context to this. No one I knew did this. I was like, I should job shadow an architecture firm and make sure I don't want to be an architect. So I job shadowed an architecture firm. I job shadowed with an interior design department. I job shadowed with like a physical therapist and all these things. And I was like, no, I think I want
Nah,
to fashion
not
designer.
what you wanna do. Yeah.
And so when I felt like because at this time simultaneously, um, and I forgot to mention this. This is such a huge thing, and I apologize. I came to know Christ when I was very young. I was about 7
Yeah.
or 8,
Yeah.
and, I felt like that's so pivotal for me because there are so many choices in my life that I think had I not known Christ at that age, I would have made very different decisions. It
Right.
would have been
Right.
decisions for me. So I'm
Mhm.
looking at all of this, like studying fashion in the context of like, how can I serve God in this and how can I help people?
Mhm.
And so I'm getting ready to go to college, and I feel like what I want to do with fashion is I want to learn to do fashion and design and, all these things. I already knew how to sew. Okay. I would learn
Yeah.
something more later
But
on.
enough to understand,
Yeah.
yeah, to communicate
And
it anyway.
yes. And so I thought, you know what I want to do? I want to go overseas and I want to be a missionary and I want to, give this skill to people, which is a little presumptuous that they don't have that skill already. But I want to
Right,
I
right,
want to use
right.
my degree to give them like business insights. Cause time too, I was like, I'm gonna minor in business and we're gonna start a business and and this is before like a lot of fair trade kind of stuff that has
Yeah.
happening now.
Yeah.
And it was around the time that Tom's was coming out with the shoes, like buy
Mhm.
one, get one. So I was like thinking about that in my head.
Yeah.
I want to do this for the Lord and I want to help people that need it and like villages of people that are marginalized and women who've been abandoned and all these things. And I'm sharing this with my county family consumer science agent, which is like it's part of 4-H, it's an extension.
Mhm.
And she's a believer and she's like, Nicole, she was like, that's such a good, like that's so good that you want to do that. She was like, but there are people in your own backyard. There's a mission field in your own backyard.
Yeah.
Was so young and so not ready to
That
receive
sounds like
that.
something I would say.
Yeah, and it's a good thing to tell people,
Yeah.
but it just planted a seed. I was just too young, and at the time, I was thinking, "There are churches here, there are people, they gotta
Mhm.
do that. They wanna be here, like, that's the thing," and I just wanted to move away from my tiny town. I wanted to
Yeah,
experience.
you thought experience something outside of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I had romanticized, living in a different country.
Mhm.
I'd read Kisses from Katie, which is a book where this girl graduates from high school. I don't think she even goes to college, and she moves to Africa, and I
Oh,
just
wow, yeah.
and she's single, and I was just like, "That's what I'm gonna do."
That's
She's
what you need to
adopting all
do,
these
yeah.
kids, and I'm just thinking that. I'm like, "Oh, man, yeah, this is great." And I again, being a stubborn, immature young girl, I'm like, and I wanna follow Jesus. I wanna go to a Christian school, but I wanna go to school in Nashville. I had a cousin who went to Liberty, and I didn't wanna go to Liberty because she was going to Liberty, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
You
wanted
gotta
to
be
stay.
different.
Yeah, I wanted to stay in Tennessee because I love Tennessee so much, and I was like, "I love Nashville." One of the best things I did in high school was go to Nashville twice a year for a 4-H trip, and I was like, "I just wanna be in Nashville." I love Nashville.
Mm,
So I go to the school that's, like, very expensive, and it is my first real experience of culture shock.
yeah, yeah.
I'm from this really impoverished rural community. And then I go to the school where a lot of my peers, their parents work in the music industry, they're producers, they're driving
Mhm,
like Hummers and
mhm.
Corvettes and Lamborghinis to school. And I'm
Yeah,
just my parents drive a 5-year-old like Toyota.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like what's happening?
And I have a
Like,
bike. No,
yeah, and
yeah,
and I don't have a car and
yeah.
oh my
Most get
god,
sent with a bicycle,
yeah.
that
And
would have been me.
yeah. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And And it was just, like, this really, like it was the first time I felt like an alien a little bit, like,
Oh,
this
yeah.
people don't understand me, like, there's no and but, again, being really young and naive, I feel like I'm extroverted now, but I've definitely, like, toned it down. Then I was, like, crazy extroverted, so
Yeah.
nobody scared me, I would talk to anyone and, it but that made me kind of turn inward a little bit more than I ever had before
Mm,
because of that, and, yeah, it felt like being again a little bit like in elementary school and middle school when I felt very different. It
mhm.
was different for different reasons. It was different
Fish
because
out of water.
yeah, because I didn't think the same way people thought, and I would
Exactly.
so it felt a little bit like that, and I was like, "I feel like I'm going backwards because I did all this growing in high school with 4-H and all the
And
stuff."
now I'm having to start over.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just felt weird. So, and I think that well, okay. I think that if I had really prayed about where I was supposed to go to college and really listened to the Lord and the Holy Spirit tell me what to do, I don't think that I would have ended up at Lipscomb, which is where I
Yeah.
was at. I think I would have ended up at a different university. But the beautiful and the awesome thing about our God is He makes like masterpieces out of the messes we make.
Mhm.
He redeems so many things, and so when we are, we take these detours that aren't what God maybe would be the best for us, right?
Right,
Still
right.
redeem that, and
He's
so
still with you. He
yes.
doesn't leave you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, I had to take a year from school. I couldn't afford to continue going to school there. It was just kind of my own like crazy, and it feels like a little bit of like a fever dream that year and then the year
Yeah.
after. Because I again didn't want to be in my tiny town. I got an apartment in Knoxville, and I worked at the University of Tennessee for extension, and then I
Mm.
worked at a little craft store here, um, and God just like it was like, okay, you're gonna learn your lesson a little bit. Like it was kind of I got put in the corner a little bit. It was like calm
Mhm.
down.
He has a way
And
of doing that.
yeah, and my cousin who went to Liberty had passed away when she was at Liberty. And
Mm,
it was the first person who was in my life who passed away
mm,
close with. We were pretty really, really close. And I had put it off in my head. I didn't talk about it that whole year. It was really hard for me to process. But then I'm by myself. I'm living in this apartment. I'm working these 2 jobs. I'm working like 60 to 80 hours a week.
mm.
And um and I just got really depressed.
Yeah.
And it was my first bout of depression and I had anxiety. I didn't want to get out of the bed. I slept anytime that I wasn't working, I was
Yeah,
asleep.
you were just in bed. Yeah.
And it was really hard and really difficult. And it took my mom coming to me and saying, "Hey, I'm seeing stuff in you that that I
Doesn't look good.
yeah, that doesn't look good, that I've seen in your family that has slipped into addiction. And I know that God has something for you, and I don't want you to feel like at your ripe age of 19 that it's over because you failed
Mm,
here. Because God has more for you."
mhm.
That was a good pep talk. And
Yeah.
so I started applying to transfer to universities because my plan was to always to go back to school. Like in my head, there was no thought that I
Yeah.
would go back to school. And I applied for any Christian university that had an apparel program and that
Right.
gave me a scholarship. And there aren't very many, as you can imagine, schools
Mm-mm.
that are Christian that have an apparel program, especially ones that I could afford, realizing now
Right.
I can afford to go to a school that's almost 60K a year. Okay. What
No.
can I do?
Wow.
And, and I applied to a university in South Carolina and I got a pretty decent scholarship and I didn't know anybody there. I'd never went to school. I never visited the campus. I never been to that town. And, I just was like, "Okay, this is what's been given to me. This is a good financial decision.
Yeah.
They have a
Yeah.
program. It's a Bible school. Like, I'm gonna learn about a lot about the gospel and about the Bible and scripture and how to interpret scripture." And I was like, "Okay, this is gonna be great." And the only people that I had any connection with there was I had some cousins that were my mom's age that in the 70s had went to college there. That
Uh,
was like
oh,
the only
wow.
like connection.
Yeah.
And it was very different than to
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
normal.
Very different. Yeah.
And so I went there and it was again another culture shock because I'd gone to the school in Nashville
Mhm.
where we had
Mhm.
a curfew, but it was really loose. We could wear whatever we wanted to wear and we could listen to whatever we wanted to listen to. We got to go to concerts. They had concerts on campus, like and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
different. We whatever. This school had a bunch of rules. It was just very different the way
Very
they did
strict.
things. It was a lot stricter. And I remember being like, okay, God, I was like, you are sovereign. And even if I don't agree with these rules, you have placed this headship and this leadership over me.
Mhm.
And I'm going to submit to that because I'm submitting to you. And that's the heart posture and the head posture that I had to be in to be successful there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I
I would
had been
think
like,
so.
this is so stupid, this is dumb, and
You
the
wouldn't have
rules,
you would
my
have
parents,
left.
yeah, my
Yeah.
parents wouldn't even give to me. You know what I mean? And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, we're just gonna do this. And God blessed me so much with wonderful friends and community there, like
Mm.
almost immediately. I think there was only one day that I was like, I really kind of just want to go home. And
Yeah.
my mom was like, I just want to come back. This is stupid. And she's like,
Yeah.
no, you've done this before. Like you can do
Yeah.
it
You
again.
can do this.
And so I like met my best friend in the world when I visited the campus. And so when we started school together, um, she and I just clicked like that. And I just talked to
That's
her this
good.
morning and she's got a baby and she's married. We've been
Oh, so
11 years now.
cool.
Yeah. And so
Oh,
like we're just tight. And my roommate that year also like, is one of my best friends. Talked to her last night. Like just God
put
gave
the
me
right
so much
people in your
best
life.
kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I go through school and it wasn't easy by stretch of imagination, but it didn't.
Mm.
And in the time of school, like God starts really working on my heart as I'm just like pouring into learning about who He is, and I'm starting to do more ministry work. I'm working. It was when I first time I going behind the walls and doing jail ministry. That was
Mm.
what I did at college for a ministry project, and you didn't have to do one. That's what I just wanted to.
Right. That's what you did. Yeah.
And a lot of that was influenced by my grandmother who
Yeah.
was in jails and she was still working at this time, and I was like, "Yeah, this is great." And I really was able to connect with a lot of the women there because of the way that I was raised and experiences I had, and, I just saw God radically move in their lives, and
Mm.
God was working in my life and just taught me so much through trusting Him and experiences that I had and reading His Word. And it was just, and what's cool is like I'm thinking about this and like I feel so much deeper with God now. And it's just so cool because then I
Mhm.
would be like, oh, this is so great. And it was great.
Yeah.
Cool how much
Yeah.
it grows and grows.
Yeah.
Um, and so I was like, God started working in my heart and planting seeds. And I was like, it would be kind of cool to have my own business one day, but I don't really know. And I was like, I feel like what God wants me to do is do like a vocational ministry. So like go and work in the fashion industry
Mhm.
and, be a light to the people there because the fashion industry is really dark. And,
Mhm.
at the time I was like kind of disillusioned with like how clothes were actually produced and how they were made and stuff. And so I should have graduated in the spring, but I decided to take an extra semester so I could get an internship, which is all Jesus, and then finish my minor in communications. And so I have this fall to winter semester that I'm doing this internship, and it is like one of the most pivotal things in my career, which sounds crazy, so
Mhm.
early on, but they filled in all the gaps that my degree
That
did
you were needing. Yeah.
that I needed, and they paid me to learn programs that they didn't
So
teach
good.
in school.
Yeah.
Um, it was just all Jesus and all amazing,
Mhm.
and that's really when I started to learn that, like, God brings people in your life, people that aren't
Mhm.
even Christians, that don't even know Him,
Mhm.
for His kingdom. Like, He still
Yeah.
uses people,
Yeah.
and as an opportunity for you to go, "Hey, you might not see this, but God is using you in my life to bless me,
Yeah.
show
Yeah.
me, and to give me things that I need and equip me," and they're like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." And some of them are,
Right. Right.
you know,
Right. But you
um
still get to share that with them.
yeah, and build relationships, and so then I was
Mhm.
really affirmed. I was like, "Man, God, like, this is awesome, like, I just see you working in this," and God blessed my career for about 8 years. I worked so many different places and in the fast fashion industry and, learned so much through my career in the time that I had, and all the while I'm doing, like, ministry with people who are, homeless and people that are coming out of rehab
Mm.
facilities and working with like children's homes and stuff in my free time, getting really involved in local church. And and I'm starting to really like things are starting to like crack for me in the fashion
Yeah.
industry. I'm starting to like see how the sausage gets made and like really understand like, oh, this is not great. And
Mhm.
um one of the things, and I talked about this yesterday with somebody. I remember when I was working for a large department store, I won't say who they are, but there was a fire in one of our factories in
Mm.
India, and it delayed our production for about 3 months, which it really isn't that
Mhm.
long at all. But they were freaking out, and they weren't freaking out because the factory was on fire and people had lost their lives, and because people were gonna not have jobs for 3 months and they probably would lose their homes, their
Mm.
children might go
Mm.
without food. They were freaking out because we weren't gonna be able to deliver these silly little fall themed, rompers for kids. We weren't gonna
Mm.
have the, little fall colored shirts and tops.
Mhm.
And it
Mhm.
was just like, "Oh my goodness. This is not how I wanna use my skills and abilities and my talents that God has given me." And,
Mhm.
I can't continue to, like, add on to this. But, like, I knew in my heart that I wasn't ready to, like, do my own thing. Like, I knew I needed to still grow.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
um and I'm so thankful that God allowed me to work in the fast fashion industry for the length that I did because I learned so much about product development and about working with factories overseas and about how things are done and about sales and margins and all these things that are really important in the industry.
Yeah.
And had I maybe known what I know now when I was in college, I wouldn't have gotten to learn that in the same way.
Mhm. The hands-on is
Yeah,
so
so
important.
I'm
Yeah.
really, really thankful. And so I kinda was like, "Okay, how can I keep doing apparel, but maybe do it a little more mindfully?" And I was like, "The outdoor industry does things a little more ethically, let's do that." So I was in the fast fashion industry for almost 2 years, and the rest of my career was working for the outdoor, world. My last job, that I had, I was a design director for, a small, medium-ish size men's, brand, and they had a women's brand for a little while as well, and loved that job. It was such a
Mhm.
blessing from God, like, it was great, and but God gave me this margin in my life because of that job to really just start praying and asking Him what He had for my life
Mhm.
outside of, like, the vision that I had, right?
Right.
Is there
Increase
anything
your
more?
vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, God just started really pouring again in my heart. He's like, "Hey, remember when I said that you maybe could start your own business? And remember all those things that you learned, with the fast fashion industry and seeing how corrupt and how horrible it is and how overproduced things are. Like, do you remember all that?" I'm like, "Yeah." Maybe you could start
Mhm.
something that's like the opposite of that. Like, maybe you could do something that's good for people and good for the planet and like helps people and all these things. I'm like, "Oh, I don't know about that."
Oh, yeah, that's
Scary.
stretching me a little bit
Uh,
here.
'Cause I felt like I could totally kick butt at, like, starting a business that's, like, making something a little bit ethically overseas. Like, I think I could do that, and I think I could do it really well because the margins and the price are there. Um, I could totally do that, and even now I'd be like, yeah, it'd be great. Let's do that." Because
Mhm.
what God was calling me to is like, "No, I want you to do something
Hard.
stretching and hard." And, so in 2020 when COVID happened, that really gave me a lot of time to, I got engaged, so we planned our wedding
Mhm.
and, got married that year, and
In
then
2020, you
yeah,
got
in
married?
2020. Yes, we did. And, and I completely left him out of this whole story, but I met him my last semester of college, like, right before my last semester, so that summer,
Mhm.
and, we met in Wisconsin at his sister's wedding. I was in jail ministry with the guy that she ended up marrying,
Oh
and
my goodness.
we were friends, and so from our friendship, I met his sister, and she and I became friends, so when they got married, they invited me to the wedding, and I went with a group of friends from South Carolina to Wisconsin, and we met, like, the last minute, and we just started talking and never stopped talking is basically what happened.
Mhm.
A few weeks
Mhm.
later, I had gone to New York City for, like, half of the summer to serve with a church and try to do some job shadowing at some fashion companies in New York. And one of my friends who was up there was gonna set me up on a blind date with a guy who was there, and Justin, my husband, had texted me, and he was like, "Hey, do you wanna, like, call?" And so I broke off my date with this guy, and, I mean, that might have been a really cool experience to go on a date in New York City. I
I
know
know, but
but
yeah,
but
yeah.
I was like, "No, I really wanna talk to this guy," and that
Yeah,
was when I was like, "This is something, like, this
you
is something."
could feel it. Yeah.
And so, a few months later, we started actually dating, and then by Christmas, his sister and brother-in-law were moving back to South Carolina, and well, she had never lived there. His brother-in-law was moving back to South Carolina, and
Yeah.
so, he was like, "I'll move with you guys so I
Uh,
could be near Nicole," and so he moved across the country,
aw.
got a new job, and then, when I graduated, I was like, "Okay, bye, I got a job, I have to leave."
Oh,
And so
no.
I left. I know, he's a trooper, but he was so encouraging of my career, and has always been so encouraging of my career throughout the time we were dating, through
Mhm.
and that was something that guys that I dated in college just didn't have
Didn't have the vision.
the vision.
Yeah.
They didn't see why a woman of God would wanna work in the fashion industry, sorry, why, a woman of God would, you know, do the things that I felt called to do, and they didn't see
Mhm.
it, and, like, "Why are you going to a prison?" Like, all these things,
Yeah, yeah,
and,
yeah.
"Why do you wanna adopt and foster?" And my husband was like, "I would love to foster." Like, one of the first things that when I said, "I would love to adopt," and something I found out later was when I had told him that I wanted to adopt, he started, like, putting back money for, like, an adoption fund for
Oh
it.
my goodness.
And so he's just great, and,
Mm.
it's just all Jesus all over that, and one of the things that's really cool about our story is he got saved in high school, came to know Christ, like, later in high school, and, when we first got married, I had all my journals. I've journaled since I was in high school, and they're all prayer journals, and when I started doing it in high school was I was reading a bunch of, like, courtship books and stuff, like,
Mm.
future husband, all these things, which are a little silly, but I had written in one of my journals the summer that he got saved, I had written, "Lord, I pray that my husband would know you and love you and live his life for you. And I pray if he
Aw.
doesn't know you now, God, that he would come to know you." And that
Mm.
was the same summer that he came
That's the same
back.
summer.
And like, it's crazy to
I've
think,
got chills
like, I know,
already.
isn't it crazy? And like,
This is
I get,
so cool.
yeah. And so I found that out and I literally told everybody, I was like, "Oh my gosh, you're never going to
He
believe
got
it." 'Cause-
saved the same
Yeah.
time I wrote
Yeah.
that.
And,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just amazing, and so, because I would have thought that, coming to school later and, like, taking a gap year and transferring universities and, being with people who were a little bit younger than
Mhm.
me for, like, being a grade behind and, hanging out with people who, like, were from different parts of the country, like, I would
Mhm.
have never been able to think that this would lead to me
So
meeting
where you've
a husband and,
yeah.
like, having
Yeah.
this wonderful partner who loves me and who loves the Lord and who wants to see me, like, pursue the dreams that God has written on my heart and wants to
Yeah.
partner with me in them,
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so anyway, so then we got married, and after the wedding, I was like, thinking like it was weird to not have something to be planning because I was
Yeah.
juggling working and planning the wedding, and I was
Right.
like, I feel so, like, void. Like, I was like, "I
Yeah.
need a
What am I
project."
supposed to be doing?
And, my husband was like, You have talked about starting this business, like, God's really started to play it in your heart. Maybe you should just take the next little bit and just start, like, writing out what it would look like and praying about what it would look like and trying to figure it out." And so I started doing that and, like, really trying to see if it would be something viable. Like, the business
Mhm.
side of my mind was like, "Okay, see if this actually could work before you just dive both feet in." And so I was like, "Okay." So I made like business plans, I did research, I did a bunch of like sourcing research to figure out who I could get fabric from, who could help me manufacture it. And then by 2022, I was like, I think this is going to work. And I'd written out this lovely business plan and had started saving money from my job and putting it back for the business and stuff. And um 2022, we ordered our first samples and had designs done and everything. And I was just like, man, this is crazy. And so 2022, we knew that the business, because part of the vision of the business was that it would be an Appalachian company. And we weren't living
Uh,
in Appalachia, we were living in Charlotte.
yeah.
Um, and we had God had blessed us so much with community in Charlotte and everything, um, and I was just like, I really feel like I'd want us to move to Tennessee, and that was something that Justin and I, before we got married, had talked about doing when we wanted to start looking at having a family, and I was like, I know this sounds weird, but should we like maybe think about moving to Tennessee? And so we started
Mhm.
praying, um, and we're like, whenever a door opens, that's when we'll go. And we'll stay in Charlotte until then, but we wanna be there before the brand launches in fall
Yeah.
23. And, keep in mind, I started all this in like the end of 2020, beginning of 2021, and we weren't launching till fall 2023. So we had quite some
You
time.
had some planning. Yeah.
And so it's fall, it's like the end of 2022 summer, so like August time. And my husband has like a particularly like rough day at work, and he's like, I'm just gonna apply for a bunch of jobs in Knoxville and see what happens. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens.
What? Uh-huh.
And so he applies for a bunch of jobs, and he applied like on a Thursday night, and Friday morning he got like 10 calls from 10 different businesses. And we're like,
Wow.
okay. And so he, goes and interviews at one place that seems particularly exciting to him. Um, and we share with our small group, we share with like our mentor at church, and we're like, this is something. And keep in mind, like I had been set up to like do things at our church this fall. Like I was going to be leading women's
Yeah.
Bible study. I had started doing more
Yeah. Because you're involved. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
with our worship team and stuff at
Yeah.
church, and I just felt like God really had us plugged in here, and I was like, "I don't know about this," and I was like, "But also, like, we need to go and there's a door open, like, all
Yeah.
these things," and I remember we were that Sunday after those calls had happened, we had a guest pastor at our church for, like, the summer, and he was just his only Sunday there, and he was from Knoxville,
Ah,
and it just felt like this, like, okay,
this
like,
is
it's so
crazy.
random, and I was
Yeah.
like and he starts talking about, like, his church and all this stuff, and we're like, "Man, that'd be a really cool church to visit." We didn't end up going to church there, but it was just, like, at the
Yeah.
time commitment, like,
Yeah.
the
Just
summer
some light
vacation.
bulbs. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, we started sorry. We started looking at places to rent and like putting feelers out on social media. And of course, like I knew people from the area, and a lady that I had known from 4-H was a real estate agent in
Ah.
Knoxville. And she was like, "Hey, I know someone who has a house for rent that they haven't put on the market yet. Maybe you would like to see it." And so everything just kind of worked out super perfectly for us to move here, like at the very beginning
Hmm.
of September, and leave Charlotte, which was hard.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
friends
I'm
that
sure it
really
was.
cried, and but we knew in our hearts that we weren't gonna be there long, like, it
Yeah.
was a season, and so it made it a little bit easier for us to step into the next thing, and, so then I'm working remotely. That was a big thing too. I was afraid that my job wouldn't let me move to Tennessee because I
Yeah.
was currently in Charlotte,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Yeah, go.
Oh,
Do it, Tennessee. Like,
cool.
it's great," and I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay," and, then so God was, like, really blessing that and all these things. We're like, "Man, this is awesome. We feel so much peace from God. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord, that we get to move to Tennessee." Like, and
Hmm.
this is, like, another confirmation that what we're planning for
What
friends.
you're doing is right. Yeah.
And, and so I was like, "Okay." Um, so we move here, we get this house, and we're like, "Oh, this is, like, not this greatest house." I'd seen it when they were working on it,
Yeah.
and then all the things that I just assumed they were gonna fix because they were still working on it didn't get fixed, and so we're like,
Mm.
"We're in this, like, not super great house," and
Yeah.
it took us a very long time to find community here, and it was hard for a while. And so still working my job, and then they got bought out by a company, and a lot of things changed with everything. And I was starting to pray, it's like, God, when do you want me to resign? Because I'm starting this business in the fall.
Yeah.
When do you want me to resign? So now we're in 2023, and I turned 30 in 2023. And so I was like, I feel like 30 is the year that like I am leaving.
Hmm.
And so much of my life that, I had experienced, I held on to until God took
Yeah.
it out of my hands.
Yeah.
The college I went to, guys that I dated, situations that I was in, places I lived,
Hmm.
um, being in classes, like all these different things that I just held on to because I didn't want to let go because I thought that I knew better. And I really felt God telling me, like, you are mature and you know that I want you to do this. And I'm not going to rip it
Hmm.
out of your hands. You're going to have to let go of it.
Mm.
And so it was a really random day in May. I'd gotten kind of an email that didn't sit right with me. I was like, nope, today's the day. So I set up a Zoom with my boss, and I resigned. And it was hard to do because I part of me was like, I don't really want to do that
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was a job. It was my favorite job I've ever had, and I love my job. But things
Yeah.
were changing, and I knew I needed to step out, and it was a good time to step out. And I worked there for 2 more months, so I gave them a lot of time to find my replacement, and I
Right.
trained my replacement and all this stuff, and left on really good terms, like really good situation. I couldn't have prayed for a better situation that ended up
Mm.
happening. And so loved by everyone that's still there, very thankful. And so then I'm like, "Okay, I'm an entrepreneur." And like,
Yeah.
this is my
Boom. Here
first day.
I am.
I really am, I'm an entrepreneur, yay.
Yeah.
And man, I that was a year ago that I left my job was my last day. I think my last day was July the 13th, I think. So we're
Mm,
almost
almost a year.
uh-huh. And man, God has done so much. And
Mhm.
it isn't what I would have said. Let's like
Yeah.
if it was
It's
you
his writing.
yeah. If it you asked me a year ago where I wanted to be a year
Mhm.
later,
Mhm.
it would not be right here. It would not.
No.
But God has done so much and given me the opportunity, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, to trust him
Mhm.
in a really deep and intimate way. And in ways that had I not left my job, had I not stepped into entrepreneurship, that I would have never had experienced
Right.
without any of this. And so
Mhm.
God has been so good. And, he's written everything about what the business is and what we're doing, and I'm just trusting him in it because,
Mhm.
like I said, this isn't what I would think I would want it to be right now, but it's like
Mhm.
the God who did everything before in my life and in your life and whoever's in this life, like he has got my back and he knows the
Yeah.
future. And if that future is for me to continue to do this for a few years, so I have the flexibility to still serve and minister in the way that I'm serving and ministering right now, and then just, meet people and talk about
Mhm.
behind Fern+daisy, and then he moves me to something else, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm so open-handed with what God has.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, um, I started the business that is called fern+daisy after my 2 wonderful grandmothers.
Mm.
We have 3 pillars. All of our product is sustainably and ethically made in America. We work with a program that's in the Midwest that hires women out of homelessness to sew our clothing.
Mm.
And they, make everything in small batches, so we only produce 25 pieces of everything that I design, so that way there's not any overconsumption, and there's not a lot of waste because we might not sell,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever. And so I'm rather would sell out to people who wanna wear it and are excited about it than, anything else. So we do that, and then, we give a portion of our profit to women who are coming out of rehab in Central Appalachia. And so I
Mm.
partner with, a ministry that gives financial access to people who are coming out of rehab. My money is specifically earmarked for women who are coming out of rehab in
Mhm.
Central Appalachia, and they have access then to funding for housing, transportation, education, and childcare, and it's given
Nice.
to them as a loan, and they have to pay a portion of it back. A lot of times women wanna pay all of it back, but, sometimes they just pay a portion, and,
Yeah.
it's been really cool to see God just over and over again affirm that this is what he wants for us. Just when I feel
Mhm.
like I'm, like, waning and I'm like, "Is this really right? Is this right? Did I really
Yeah. Are you
I
sure?
don't
Yeah.
maybe I should have a part-time job besides this." He, like, answers a prayer, and he just,
Mm.
like it's just like, "Nope, here we go, I got you."
Yeah.
I feel like, Peter coming out of the boat and, like,
Yeah.
taking my eyes off Jesus and starting to sink,
Mhm.
and then he catches me, and he, like, pulls me back up,
Mhm.
and it's just been really, really awesome to see, and just his provision in our lives over and over again. Um, and it's all for that dependency on him. And so I'm really thankful. And our goal is to eventually move our manufacturing to Central Appalachia in the community that I'm from
Oh, that would be awesome.
and hire women that we're building relationships now to sew the pieces and give them careers beyond their scope of their dreams. Because, like,
Right.
I know what it's like to be a young person there and
Mhm.
have that generational poverty and have that generational like blindness about like what the
Mhm.
future holds for you and not being able to see all the realities of what the world holds and how God can use you and being able to give hope in a way that allows them to see all the different facets of a business and kind of go whichever way they are interested in. Google has this really cool program. I'm not sure they still do, but they did a couple years ago when I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
research, where if you work in any part of their business at their Google campus, you can take 6 months and you can train with this new department and get a certificate saying that you know about marketing
Ah,
or
yeah. Yeah. So you're
IT,
learning all
whatever.
areas. Yeah.
But I would love to, like, have that as part of the business and offer counseling and have flexible schedules for them and just well, give this resource to people that they don't have. Like, there are no businesses in
No.
my area that, offer a flexible schedule. There are no
Mhm.
resources to offer counseling, and that's what these people need. They need these extra
You need
supports.
it. Yeah. So they can sustain
Yeah.
life
Yeah.
now in their
So
new way. Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I mean, that's a lot that God has done. And, and I'm so thankful. And, he's just really shown himself faithful. And even in like the little things that maybe aren't so little, like my husband lost his job for a little while. We were without a job and things were financially bleak and God just still provides and
Mhm.
years um and he has a job now. That's great. And so it's just
Oh, that's
and
so
it's better
good.
than another job. And so it's
Oh,
like,
good.
man, like God is so good and
Like,
he
just hold on, I've
yeah,
got
yeah,
you.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
so, so thankful. And I just can't wait to see what God does, continues to do through me as I continue to show up every day with my hands open and say, God, what do you have for me? And it's crazy because these are things that like maybe I would have said at 22 or 21 or even,
Mhm.
25. But did I mean it as much as I mean it now? No,
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
seen God's faithfulness in that. And I
Yes.
know how much He's going to take care of me. And I know that as long as He wants me to continue living, He's going to continually provide.
And pour into you.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think as we age, we
Yeah.
see it more and more.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I see a whole lot more at 62 that I did at 31.
Yeah.
At 31, I would never imagine that
Mhm.
I'd be at the place I am now in life
Mhm.
and all that he has provided through me and for me and my family. I mean, I grew up a great life too as a preacher's daughter and
Yeah.
knew God from a young age as well. I was saved at a Billy Graham crusade at 9. And
Wow.
I'm thankful for that young age of acceptance
Yeah.
because me too, knowing it helped me make decisions through my life, not always good,
Yeah.
but he was there and
Yeah.
he guided me back when I allowed him to be a part of that, right? We have to do, I just love your story. I love your um willingness to stay open-handed to
Mhm.
him and what he has for you in your future because it's big. He's got great things for you because you are so committed to what your heart is calling you to do. And so many people are going to be so blessed by all this. I just get chills thinking about the lives that you're changing and touching. And again, teaching them to be open handed to his calling. This may be a stepping stone for them, like you said, into something bigger
Yeah.
and realizing that they can do that and not be held back because of the generational
Yeah.
things that have happened in their life. We can all stay stuck or we can move forward and
Yeah.
be blessed in such big ways. So I have a stack of cards that I just shuffle as we're talking, and they're scripture cards. And I always love what God puts there on top. So
Mhm.
let's see what he's got for us today. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in
Mhm.
insults, in hardships, and precautions, and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Woo.
2 Corinthians 12:10. Now, was that not for us today?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, for Christ's sake, he is always there in every part of our life.
Man.
So, one little question, Nicole, before we get off here. What is something you like to collect?
Oh gosh, I wish I could show you around my living room right now. There's so many antique things. I am really drawn to like and they're really hard to find now because thrifting and antiquing has been so changed in the last 5 to 10 years. But I love like Victorian era like
Uh-huh.
house pieces. I have so many frames and pieces of furniture from the Victorian era and so yeah, I love stuff like that, like really intricate antique
Hmm.
things. Part of it this sounds crazy. Sometimes I watch hoarders to motivate myself to
Yeah.
keep them.
Yeah.
I don't wanna I don't wanna eat
Yeah. So
them,
you
but I'm
don't have
like
so much.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I because I do thrift a lot, but there
Yeah.
was one sweet lady who, she didn't wanna get rid of her things because when she touched them, she felt, like, connected to
Mm,
her grandmothers and her great
yeah.
she
Yeah.
lived and that resonated so much in
Hmm.
I do collect so many
Hmm.
things. I can look around and see, like, 5 or 6 different things that belong to my grandmothers that are just
Yeah.
me. So, I'm collecting older things that, someone else cherished. I don't like throwing
Yeah. I
away that
know.
I think
I picked up a blanket one time that somebody crocheted and I thought,
yeah.
oh my gosh, at a thrift store. I thought the time that took to make that, and I
Yeah.
wonder what it was for. And thought, I'm gonna bring it home and I'm gonna
Yeah,
make it mine.
that's
You know,
exactly what I
and I'm
did.
like, I did not need
Oh,
that blanket, but I
yeah. Yeah,
couldn't let it go because it drew me. And I was like, same thing. I love to thrift. I love to shop, and I
yeah,
do estate sales. I set them
yeah,
up.
yeah. Oh, you do?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have a partner,
Cool.
a girlfriend of mine. We do that, and so every time I walk in, I start thinking how hard this is for them to
Yeah.
let go.
Mhm.
And we're doing one that we're going to do next week, and they've been there 18 years. They are
Mhm.
collectors. They have beautiful things, but they're having to go to like 900 square feet, age, you know. And I'm thinking, oh, we walked through it. And I'm just listening to the history and the
Mhm.
things, how they could just talk about it and what it meant to their heart immediately. I thought,
Yeah.
this has to be so hard, so hard. So I get that. My house was full, my previous house, and I'm
Yeah.
like, I've had to be careful. Same thing of not collecting so many things. And my biggest, I think I've carried on and kept is angels and just certain pieces,
Yeah.
certain things. And I have a sweet friend that's going through colon cancer as well. And she started painting for therapy. And she had went to one of those paint classes, one time. And
Yeah.
then she taught herself and she just started drawing. And God has used her in that to let her paint out and in beautiful ways in ministry. And she had done one angel, and I was like, girl, I want one of those eventually. I love that. And so
Yeah.
she gifted me the angel for us. And
Mhm.
then I get another one that she had put some stones on, and it's just so pretty.
Wow.
And then different ones, she just keeps blessing me with her paintings. I was like, oh, I just love these because they mean so much, and I know the purpose behind
Yeah.
them. But again, it's fun to collect. You have to take a carefulness
Yeah.
and approach to the collection, but it
Yeah.
is fun to collect. It has been great being
Yeah.
with you today. Thank you for sharing your heart and your purpose. And I know the Lord is going to continue to bless you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. Same for you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining my podcast today. We all have a story to share. Each story has purpose and makes an impact to you, the listener, creating a journey with passion and purpose. The journey we're taking is the journey within you. Please share with others and subscribe below.